professor. And hey, it's 4 a.m., which is the typical time I usually wake up, usually about 4:30. And someone asked, "Is it always hot in Mexico?" Yeah, it is. It depends on which part of Mexico. Mexico is huge. The Sonora Desert, hot, but at nighttime it gets below zero. Chihuahua, hot until the wintertime. Then it snows. And then there's other places like Baja California. The northern you get, it gets pretty damn cold. The higher elevation and so on. But I'm going to show you guys real quick. Security guys, security teams outside, and I want to show you what the weather's like here, which is where I am. It is about 45 degrees, and it's been like this for the past week, which means that, well, it's December, so but usually the weather gets cold right around December time, November, but gets colder in January, and then it starts to warm up in March, April, just like Europe in some places. But it depends on depends on the geographics of where you are in Mexico. So the higher the elevation, it's going to give you some extreme difference in weather. Also depends on the humidity of where you are. For example, I'm about to show you guys what happens every morning in Zacatlan at 7 a.m. It happens here at 4 a.m. And that is the pressure change, the pressure differential in the weather. Okay, so if you know anything about, I guess this wouldn't be time for that, but let me just show you when you've got low pressure and you've got high pressure. Low pressure would mean the the amount from the earth to the clouds. Sometimes you've got low pressure and then you have high pressure. The high pressure is when you're coming down here. The low pressure is the further distance from the earth. If I'm wrong, write in the comments the correct answer, because I don't know. So let's take a look outside, and I'm going to show you what the weather's like. So that way you can see for yourself. Very foggy. All foggy. By the way, there's some action out here earlier. I wasn't sure what the hell it was. There was a cops running around. There's that fucking dog. But you see this? This is all humidity that comes down every morning. Isn't this crazy? Dude, this is the best. What are you talking about? This is crazy. And it's cold. And like I said, the humidity happens now because this is the time that you need to water your plants. If you guys didn't know that shit. Okay, you know we're renovating the park. You know we're doing a reforestation project with a bunch of volunteers. And this is good news for us because we just planted 200 plants and trees the day before yesterday. Now I go back and I'm just checking the seeds. I'm just checking the very, very basic seeds. Now I'm going to tell you what we basically we plant food. We don't plant flowers. Flowers are a waste of time. So is grass. But what we do is we plant things that can be eaten. So that includes stuff like herbs that can be grown quickly, and even if the people want to take them, it's okay, because that was our whole thing. We don't make money from doing any of this stuff, so it doesn't really matter. The chicken bus, I still don't have windows. So when you got weather like this, you can almost guarantee that you're gonna have germinated seeds. So it's cool 45 degrees. It's gonna jump up to 65 degrees. Still great. You know what I mean? It's December. What's the weather like where you are? What do you say, Wedo? If we planted 200 plants, and I'm talking about what did we plant? What did we plant? We planted lentils, garbanzos, corn. Oh, what other? And these are just cover crops. And we put them in the park. That's the thing. Park is not maintained at all. The government basically abandons them. So we took over the park. We took over the parks, plural. And it made them so embarrassed that a bunch of civilians were cleaning up the parks. They decided to chip in and do it too. So let's talk about the plants that we planted. Now, the reason why I plant these two specific plants is because a lot of times some places in Mexico can have lots of rats and lots of mosquitoes. So how would you handle rats? Well, one very, 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 very invasive but very effective plant is the yerba buena. Now, yerba buena is good to drink also, but it is an invasive species. Then there's spearmint. There's mint. Okay, so mint, if you guys didn't know, is a very invasive species of plants, but it's so easy to grow. It's crazy. Even in this weather that's 45 degrees, tomorrow morning, well, today morning, because it's 4 a.m., we're going to go over to the park. I'll show you this later. And check our germination, our seeds that are germinated. Because this is how I do it. I don't even put them in the ground because the ground is too hard. It's not tilled or anything like that. What I do is I wait, I check the weather, and just before rain, which we had 3 days of rain, we will clean the whole area first, so it's just dirt. So all this is just soil, not dirt, soil. And when in the process of cleaning, it aerates the ground. This ground is hard as concrete. So I'll take handfuls of corn and I'll just chuck it just like you would if you were seeding a field. And that's all this is. Just chuck, 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 chuck. That's all I was doing. With the lentils, I checked yesterday. The lentils are sprouting. They're sprouted. They're probably two millimeters long. The sprouts are. And then garbanzo beans, which have 0 sprouts. They're probably still hard as a rock because we haven't had enough moisture. But we have 3 days of rain, which means it's a good time to plant. But because of the temperature, see, this is the tricky part. People think Mexico is so friggin' hot that it's like an oven. Yes, it is in some areas. And it depends on the day. It depends on the elevation. It depends on the time of year. It depends on the pressure. Is it high? Is it low? And anyway, it's 4:30 in the morning. It's 4 something in the morning right now, like 4:10. And I'm sitting there thinking about it. I was like, what can I do to reverse this desert that we have here, the park? Because if you guys remember a year ago, we started renovating the park as far as the reforestation project in Mexico. We're all a bunch of volunteers that know how to plant trees. Big deal. And so we aerated a lot of the soil 2 months ago. 2 months, 2 months ago? Yeah, we started about 2 months ago. So we aerated a lot of the soil. And the first time it rained, because we had pulled all of the roots up and pulled all of the grass away, it left behind just a handful of grass seeds, which is fine because that's what I'm kind of going for, even though I don't want grass. What I want is something that's going to infiltrate. It'll perforate the soil so that when I go to plant, the soil is held together with these root systems, or mycelium in some cases, which is mycelium is absolutely preferred because it goes underneath the soil and it helps the plants to communicate with each other. And in addition to that is that nobody's doing this. So it's not like anybody could say anything. They're like, as a matter of fact, last week we had a meeting and it was my neighbors that were saying that, yeah, we're okay. Your mulching thing over there, we saw rats in it. And I'm like, that's not possible. I literally just put like 20 kilos of fruit and vegetables on it. And then I put activated carbon in it. And then I put green grass on top of that. And then I put topsoil on top of that. Then I put another layer of carbon on top of that. Then I put green on top of that. And you got to realize this is all caged in with some chicken wire. And so this is the funny part, is that people who neglected the park all these years are the ones that are criticizing us. Isn't that ironic? I mean, this is the problem with this particular park, is that are abandoned. They're full of homeless people that are in there doing whatever kind of drugs. And they do something with light bulbs here where they steal people's light bulbs and break them and then use the filament to do whatever. And in the process, they poison the ground with mercury. I don't know. See, this is just a story I've been told. So they're like, what do you think? What can we do about these parks? I said, well, what's the contamination? What do you mean? Is it, heavy metals or whatever? Well, it's mercury. I'm like, how the fuck does mercury get into a public park? I said, well, the simplest and easiest way to do it is to float it out, which means that you will dig down 4 to 6 inches of soil or 10 to 20 centimeters of soil, and you flood the area. And once you'll see that because mercury floats on water, that it'll extract itself. So, but in order to do that, you have to clean and clean and clean and clean and clean, taking all the plants away. Well, this park was full of weeds, but not just any weeds. Weeds that had seeds. There were like seed pods like this that had 6 thorns on them that were, I mean, really, really, really hardy seeds that would go right through your shoes. Like a flip-flop here, okay? So you got a flip-flop, and then you get these giant thorns that go through your shoes, and obviously if you ride a bike over them. But that's the thing, is that these plants are flat. And when it rains, it steals all the water, but it doesn't go into the soil, okay? It's a weird plant. It's like a virus, but it's super invasive and very, very, very dangerous for tigers and kids and dogs and everything. And you have no idea how many dogs I've had to pull, thorns out of their feet. We have service dogs here for U.S. veterans, and it was a response to when my service dog died. Is that the two things go together: dogs and parks. So the reason why I wanted to renovate this park, besides I like parks and I trained the kids ever at the park, and the adults too, and also dogs. So I'm teaching the dogs. I'm learning from the dogs. But they're getting, they're always crying and stuff, and I have to pull thorns out of their feet. So what I would do is go and wedge these out, and these things are really big. Like you would start off with little bitty ones like this. It looked like a spider web. Then you'll find some that are like 4 and 5 feet long that are going all over the place. Then you see this one patch of land. Looks like all dirt, but it has these yellow flowers all over the top. It's like a landmine. It's like a field of landmines for thorns. The thing about it is it's so time consuming that if I was to do a 10-meter section or a 50-foot section, basically it's going to take all day. It starts off with weather like this that's freezing ass cold, and we all go out there with our raincoats on because it's very wet. And when the fog comes down, it saturates you. You guys saw the fog, it was outside. When the fog comes down, it saturates you. So it saturates, this is flannel. So this right here will be heavy from the moisture. And then we're actually out there working and shoveling and raking and all that stuff. Then you're burning hot. By 10 a.m., the temperature has gone from, let's just talk in Celsius for a second. It's gone from 9 degrees to 19 degrees, which is about 22 degrees difference in Fahrenheit. So it might start off at 40 degrees and it'll jump up to fucking 70 degrees. And that is a big jump. If it's 10 degrees difference when it's super hot all the time and it goes down 10 degrees, it feels cold. So you guys see the revelation. The park that's behind me over here that I train the kids in, when we got there, it was just covered in glass, like broken glass all over the place because kids shoot fireworks off at the park. It has it's a basketball court. It's a cement basketball court. And it has a soccer field, football field, that's also cement. And now we have a flat area it's got these street gym machines that are very old from the 1980s or whatever. And it's AstroTurf. So I was like, well, I personally think we need to change this whole park situation so it is more of a workout center, because these machines are all broken and suck and they're all covered in rust, and it's dangerous to have rusty stuff because you get tetanus. And so if any doesn't know what tetanus is, it's when you get cut on something that's rusty. So all the benches are rusty, all the tabletops are rusty. So it's my intention, since people seem to think not everybody knows geography. So I said, hey, you know what? I got an idea. When we go to renovate all these tables, instead of just painting them and, making them look shiny, why don't we make them look um, like, well, why don't we just do this? We'll just get posters that have a lesson on them, like sign language, or we'll have a post, like a map. Let's say the map of Europe, for example, because nobody seems to know anything about the map of Europe. Only Europeans do. Americans don't know anything about geography. So when you ask, I mean, the Mexicans are always interested in you, but if you're a blonde hair, blue eyed person that's from Germany, or you're from wherever, they automatically assume that you're from the United States. Just the same as the people in the United States automatically assume that anybody who speaks Spanish is Mexican. Like if you're Puerto Rican, they're Mexican. If they're Colombian, oh, you're Mexican. See what I'm saying? Yeah, that's just what I'm saying. So if I can teach somebody a lesson in geography, I'm not going to do it directly, I'll do it indirectly. And how I do that is just buy big posters, get them laminated, or not even laminate them. Basically, all I'm doing is I'm doing all the tables in, I'm knocking all the oxidation off, and I'm doing it on all matte black primer. After I put the matte black primer on, then, and this is after we have to sand these things down to metal, so it's got 2-3 coats of primer on them, and weld them better, because they're all like loose and shit. So once we got those all cleaned up, basically I'm going to put maps, I'm going to put very simple math lessons, or I might do really hard math lessons, like tables and charts, teach kids how to do decimals and fractions and things like that. Language, because think about it, if we had a collapse of civilization and there are no more digital archives because there's no electricity anymore, you got to have physical books, and you have to have physical evidence, you have to have physical stuff to teach people, or stuff for people to learn. So what do I see everybody lacking in is in geography, is in history, is in mostly physics. Because people make stupid mistakes. This is why you see people falling down and making, bad decisions. This is because of physics. And physics are racist too, by the way. Physics and math is all, it's all discriminatory. So the park, like I said, has, it's probably about 5, 6, 8. I'm going to say it's an acre and a half. I'm going to say it's an acre and a half park. We have 2 trees in the whole park. The rest are just little bitty trees that we planted. So I was like, okay, so it was a desert before. It's been flooded over and over again, because what happens with the terrain, that the soil, if it hardens up like cement, the water is not going to come down into the soil. It's going to just run over the top. And what happens is that it accumulates all the soil that runs with the water, and then it pushes to wherever it drains. So at the lowest point, like I said, when it's been raining the last 3 days, and I've been monitoring, because we have little walkways that go through the park. And what I do is I see where the mud has flown over, and that's the area that we have to dig out and put gravel. So we eventually eliminate all of the possibility for flooding, and use that to our advantage, because once we loosen up the soil and perforate it and so on, then we can dig little spots and put rocks in them, and so we have little cisterns everywhere that there's movement of water. What we can do is put step areas, because this is completely flat, but there is probably a 1.21% angle of elevation from the highest point to the lowest point. Yesterday I found the lowest point. I found the lowest point in the park. I actually found 2 of them, and both of them have been buried. So anytime there was water that was trying to get out, it couldn't get out. And then I come to find out that the neighbors actually deliberately topped it off, because every single time it heavily rained, the water would run over the park, run out 2 singular tubes, and then collect at the bottom of a hill, which eventually would flood people's houses. So I was like, all right, guys, let's look at it like this. Since we don't have lift stations here, let's figure out how these dummies who who very badly engineered the system over here actually did it. Then as I revised and I worked backwards, I could see, you know what, their engineering here isn't bad at all. In fact, the physics are actually better than I would have expected, because I'm looking at a 1/8 inch, a 1/8 of an inch grade from the highest elevation to the lowest elevation. So that's good, because if it's, let's say 100 feet or whatever, then you can actually determine with your eyeballs. You don't even have to even try to determine what the elevation is from the highest point to the lowest point. So what I was doing as it's raining is I'm monitoring where I see dirt afterwards. Well, I see the water coming down like this, and it leaves little rivers in the walkways. So I'm like, okay, so I know exactly where the water's coming from. Now I gotta do to fix that problem, because I can't stop the water. It's gonna rain, period. But I can probably stop the thing that's causing all of the soil to turn into sand and harden up, and to eventually just keep eroding and eroding and eroding. And then the highest elevation has less soil, and the lowest elevation is totally topped out. It has 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 inches of soil over the past X amount of time, as every single week it's been flooding and flooding and flooding and flooding, and no one seems to know or care to know why. So when I spoke to my neighbors the other day, I was like, hey, listen, how long has this water been sitting here? Oh, since it rained the other day. I said, okay. And there's no like storm drain or anything there. So I was looking around, and I'm sitting there saying, I see these little squares in front of everybody's house that's got dirt in it, and people put their garbage can on a tube, like their garbage. It's actually a garbage basket. You put a basket up high so the dogs don't eat your garbage, and that's where the garbage man comes by. The problem is they put that thing right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of one of these squares that's supposed to absorb the rainwater. So when I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute, this is a really poor design, but it's also interesting that the people who are fucking the design up are actually the residents and not the people who actually designed it. So if you're looking at an elevation of, let's say they've got 10 feet over here, and then we've got 2 feet over here. So the distance between the 10 feet and the 2 feet is 8 feet. So you're going to, if it's a 1/4 inch per foot, which is the actual measurement that it should be, or 1/8 an inch per foot, because there is nothing solid that needs to flow through a system that's a storm drain system. Storm drain systems only want water to go. You don't want trash, you don't want any of that stuff to go down to your thing like this, because what happens is that if the ground is hard and it rains, if the ground is not perforated and it's not going to drain easily, it's going to drain horizontally. So it's not going to drain vertically, it's going to drain horizontally. And when water heads down horizontally, it picks up all this sand and all this dirt and all this soil, and then when the water is supposed to go out, it eventually grows and grows and grows, and then no water goes out. And then when no water goes out, what happens is that all of the plants that are in that section either rot, get moldy, or they die, or it breeds more and more weeds in your garden. Okay, so at this temperature that we're at, which is 45 degrees right now, it'll be 50 degrees in an hour, it'll be 60 degrees in 2 hours, it'll be 70 degrees in 3 hours, but it'll stop out at 74 degrees. That's a great temperature. If you see, this is winter planting. It's like normally what people would plant, when did they plant? In spring. But not me, because there are certain things that only grow in the cold. Like garlic, for example. Our farm has 55 acres, so 1 or 2 or 3 of the acres is rented out to another farmer who plants nothing but garlic. And so one day I see him out there, and I'm like, hey man, what's up? And he said, help me out, professor. I got this worm or some parasite on my leaves over here. Can you check them out? I was like, of course. So I just use Google Lens, and I'll take a picture of the leaves. So just so you guys know, these plants grow in the freezing ass cold. Garlic grows in the freezing cold, and so do peaches. So if all you fucking Atlanta people, you know goddamn well how cold Atlanta gets. It gets hot and it gets freezing ass cold. Well, that's basically Mexico. And but peaches grow in the cold. So when you go to germinate the seeds after you've eaten one, you clean it up real good, let it dry out, and then you got to put it in the refrigerator. and then like put it in a plastic Ziploc or something like that, put the date on it. 3 months later, that'll thing will start to pop out like that. It'll germinate. Then you can, at that point, plant it. But also, uh, I keep wanting to say ajo because ajo is the word for garlic. Your garlic needs to be freezing ass cold when you plant it. The temperature needs to be cold in order for it to do its thing. And for most of the people that usually go to Home Depot or something like that and grab a bag of seeds, this is guaranteed to grow. Those are all GMOs. We don't have GMOs down here. So it may be a lot harder for you in this temperature to maintain, like without a greenhouse is pretty tough to do. And I'm not exactly gonna go putting in a fucking greenhouse in a public park either. Especially here, they steal everything. If it's not strapped down, tied down, nailed down. That's why I have all those cameras over there, so I could see people that are fucking with the garden and stuff. And then I could ride over there with the patrol car and truckload of firefighters, and just pretend like we're checking on a gas leak. And then all the people that are trying to destroy the garden or trying to steal stuff, say just don't. They're not interested anymore. See what I'm saying, guys? So temperature does have a lot of bearing on what seeds you plant. What did we plant yesterday? The other day, we planted lentils. We only plant survival food, okay? There is a plant here that's called the Jerusalem artichoke, which is basically like some form of a potato, sweet potato tuber type of thing. And those grow in the wild. Most of the time that you'll see tubers, there'll be something like sweet potato or something like that. Yams, anything that, let's see, yuca. They don't have yuca here in Mexico. You believe that? Yuca is not a thing. It is in Puerto Rico and then in the Caribbean, but yuca is not a thing down here. So you can't grow things that are meant for a warmer season in the cold season. That's my suggestion, is that if you don't know, research ahead of time before you buy seeds. One way of indicating what you can plant and what you can't is go to the fruit market, the civilian fruit markets. And what I'll do is I'll go over there and observe, okay, what is perennial? What is the whole year round? What is produced here in Mexico in food or fruit or vegetables? Are things like potatoes and sweet potatoes and the different kind of sweet potatoes that they have. Let's see. Now, I'm not talking about stuff that can be grown on hydroponic towers. I'm referring to things that are tubers, that are basically roots, that wouldn't grow too hot, I don't think, in a vertical tower or in a hydroponic system. Like, you just can't do potatoes. You can maybe grow some slips, and all a slip is basically just, when you got a potato that produces eyes and it starts to grow out. Those are your slips, and you cut those off in sections, and that's what you would plant. Potatoes is another one of these things that grows in the cold, especially in darkness. So if you have, let's say you get a small bag of russet potatoes. That's not GMOs, by the way. I'm talking about just stuff that comes from a fruit market that's organic, because we don't have GMOs down here in Mexico. So we really can't compete as far as like how easy it is and how abundant they grow, because everything over there is genetically modified and over here it's not. So you're going to get smaller potatoes. So what I do is I manipulate the soil so it becomes super potent. And all I'm doing is using an old Mayan recipe for mixing soil. So it's nothing that you can't research on YouTube. Okay? And basically this is activated carbon. Activated carbon, any kind of, cow manure, fish, perhaps, fish body parts. But basically, I have a free reign on all the fruit stands that are here in town. And at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, they put their garbage out in large leaf bags, and it's all vegetation from the tops of, let's say, your cauliflower or whatever, and you got these giant leaves that are useless. Okay, we use all that stuff and we put it into the mulch station. And then the mulch station, after a period of months, produces the darkest, most abundant, just full of worms. It's full of all kinds of substrate and all kind of good stuff. And all I need is just a handful to put in some water, along with some weeds, allow it to sit, allow it to ferment, and that becomes my fertilizer. And the way that we water everything, which has become something of novelty, is see that nobody collects rainwater here because it doesn't rain all the time. So when I say, hey, here's what we'll do. When it rains, all of the families and all of the neighborhood around the park are going to collect water with barrels or buckets or whatever. And then in the morning when I go to the park, all I got to do is connect my hose up to their barrel and I can water plants free of charge. It doesn't cost anything. But I took it a step further because I've been able to calculate exactly how many liters I need per section. This is without sprinklers either. So you guys know this is an abandoned park. There's no equipment or anything on these in this land. So my intention is to do an overhead system, a fog system basically, that turns on at 4 a.m. every day, and just whatever direction the wind is going in, because I can monitor stuff. So it's an oval shape. Let's just say an oval shape, like a running track, and the wind heads south. So what I will do is I will turn the south side on. I've actually turned the cell phone because it's that timer, and that will feed all of 4 a.m. The reason why I'm talking about temperature right now in Mexico, especially if you're trying to grow anything food wise, is to see the wind direction, think about the humidity levels, and what time it gets the hottest, because you might be out there and it might be 80 degrees outside and you decide, oh, I'm going to water my lawn because it's 80 degrees outside. It's a dumb idea because you're going to lose a lot of that water in evaporation. So what I do is that, since we know that it's going to rain tomorrow by looking at, let's say, weather.com or one of the apps, you can determine in advance what the humidity level is going to be. So if you can do that, then you could put your seed out. It's going to germinate. It's going to germinate once it has sufficient liquid to do it. This way you avoid the paper towel method, or you avoid the jar method, or whatever method that you use for germinating seeds. Because I'm doing the lazy man's method, which means just walk down and, just like you're seeding your garlic or your corn or whatever, which is what we planted over here. Garlic. Let's see what we planted. I'm going to give you guys the whole rundown of what we planted. We planted sugar cane. We planted corn. We planted lentils. We planted sweet potatoes. We planted potatoes. We planted garbanzo beans. And this is all just cover crop. And the only reason why I'm doing cover crop is just to create blank spaces of where the sun comes through and dries out complete sections. So if I have a staggered plant situation which doesn't allow things to dry out, and because of the shade, it helps a lot if you have shade. That's why we have cover crops. Clover and things like that. I put clover all over the fucking place in this park. So if you'll go with me tomorrow, actually today, and when I show you guys the germinated seeds at the park, you'll see that I planted cover crop. And right next to the cover crop, like I told you guys, that if you have basic, I'm just talking about reforestation of desert-like situations, just like in Kuwait, just like in Saudi Arabia, just like in Turkey, the desert is hard as cement. So when it rains, the rain runs right over the top and then floods, because the water has nowhere to go, because the ground is too hard. It's not perforated, it's not aerated. And that's the trick to this. The minute you put a shovel into the dirt, boom, and you take out whatever it is, within a week there'll be a plant there. There'll be a plant germinating. And I'm going to check tomorrow to know. I keep saying tomorrow because it's 4 a.m. But in the morning, I'll show you exactly, like right now, the fog is doing its job. My intention is to duplicate the effects of the natural environment here and basically do it all year round, but do it on a low volume. Because it's very easy to overwater plants. You could very easily fill a tanker truck over here and just go by the park like once a day and just dump water, which I think is stupid. Okay, I have these really cool pistols that basically are miniature pressure cleaners that have a little miniature pump in them. And I'll take a 20-liter water bottle, a water tank type of thing, and all I do is put the tube in it, and I could spray all of this fog, and I can mix in any fertilizer I want, my natural stuff that has all the weeds in it and stuff, and in very, very, very little time, you have a green garden. You guys, I'm surprising myself at this point because every single time I go over there and touch anything, like all I did was take the trash out. Within a week, boom, we had sprouts growing right there. When you dig down below the very heavy grass, you'll find that that soil right there is very, very spongy and moist, and it can be broken apart. The stuff that has no grass is hard as cement, and no water will absorb there. So you'll see where all the green spots are, that's where the water used to flood. So the water that was running off the top of everything, and that doesn't help our situation as far as growing plants, growing parks, because we fix the park, we have to clean it first. Second, we're going to decontaminate it. Like I said, it had mercury contamination. So we'll flood that area and we'll remove the mercury, and you take that to hazmat. Then after all that, we let everything settle. We'll let it dry out. We'll go ahead and till the ground while watering in activated carbon. And that's what I did last month. As we were excavating, basically we had to excavate because, like I said, we have no idea where the mercury is. We have to look. It's 3 acres or something like that. We have to look for it. But I've yet to encounter any. So we did everything possible to clean, excavate, so that grass and green will come back. So we need that cover crop so that the whole time between December and March, all I'm doing is doubling down on what it is I'm planting. And in this case, I'm planting vegetables, fruit trees, aloes, herbs that are medicinal, and herbs. Everybody knows what rosemary is. Rosemary is when you cook a steak and you see that thing. It looks like it's a piece of pine or a piece of Christmas tree on top. Okay, that's called rosemary, or in Spanish, romero. What you don't know is you don't need much of that. But if you can grow rosemary near your house, first of all, it's a detoxificant. Two, you guys look into the medicinal properties of rosemary, you'd be really, really surprised. Three, it doesn't need water. Rosemary is one of these things that could grow in the desert like a damn cactus. So the idea is that we will space in between areas of darkness, of dryness, hard soil. Will integrate things like mint, which grows like crazy, rosemary, which grows without water, it's just straight sun. I mean, that's what it does. It grows like crazy. And the other plants like lentils, which is survival food, and then Jerusalem artichokes, which is not an artichoke and it's not from Jerusalem. It's just a poor man's sweet potato. Grows everywhere. It's a weed, but it's survival food. Then there's mesquite. So mesquite has these giant spines on it, and big old thorns on it, but it also has seed pods. And you didn't know this, but you can actually make flour out of those seed pods, and it's all organic, which is good. So I don't know if it's delicious, but I'm sure it's better than the garbage that you probably been getting from the grocery store. Because like I said, nothing is GMO. It's not allowed to be in Mexico as a GMO. And so what am I growing now? What has germinated? Well, what germinated yesterday was a little bit of the lentils. The lentils are all spread about just close enough to the clover so that it's not getting impacted directly from the sun. So if the plant is here, the sun is coming in at this angle like this. The minute that I put up a second crop, which is a cover crop, now the sun is coming in at a full direct thing on a cover crop, and then an indirect angle on whatever fruit or something like that dries out very quickly. Because that's what you don't want. You don't want a plant that's going to die on you quickly. So the two plants that I highly recommend, one if you want to control rats is mint. If you want to control mosquitoes is cilantro. Cilantro is a weed, you guys. All I do is just take one little bitty, like 50-cent bag of cilantro and maybe break up the ground just a tiny, tiny bit. And then I'll just take and put cilantro in lines, like sections as huge as it could be. And what does that do? It eliminates mosquitoes. So you see, we're doing some fix it to the I can't even talk. The flooded areas causes mosquitoes. So if I can eliminate the floods, I can eliminate mosquitoes. I'm going to double down on that by planting cilantro. But I'm not going to do it like you guys do it and go and buy a fucking plant from Home Depot or whatever because it's cilantro. I'll go to the fucking nearest taco place that's using cilantro and cutting it up, and I'll say, hey, give me your roots. And I'll take all their roots and I'll put it in water. Within a week, I have plants that are this big. Take those plants, transplant them over into the stuff I have already in pots. When it is mature enough, then I'm going to go and I'm going to seed again, but then I'm going to take my pots and that's going to be my cover crops. So I have cilantro in pots and then cilantro seeds in the ground. So as you can see, like I said, the angle of the sun coming down in a 45-degree angle onto your cover crop shades your seedlings. So if you have seedlings that are germinated, they can very, very easily dry out if in direct sunlight. But it's absolutely necessary for sun. So you have to figure out the devils in the details and which is worse. If I'm going to have a good crop here, the soil has to be ideal. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be ideal because weeds grow in practically anything. You take one little seed of cilantro and it drops into a crack, or worse, mint. One little seed will take over your whole damn yard. Not a bad thing if you don't have a yard, if you don't have grass like we do in this park. Basically, it's a desert. But if I can transform the look of the park in 4 months to the point where the fucking whole community realizes, oh, wow, you're a damn genius, then we could probably take over all the parks. I would love that because then I could probably make a project thing where come down to Mexico for a month and help us renovate a park. That sounds like a good idea because then I can use all these bunk beds I got in the dormitories while we're not having classes here. And you guys just stay here. In the daytime, we're just going to go from park to park to park and do our thing, planning and analyzing because we got to do soil samples, you got to do water samples, you got to do a lot of these analytical type of things prior to even planning the first thing. Directly down the street here is a Neolithic building. Right behind that, there's a park. The park used to be covered in weeds and garbage and glass and everything else. And we cleaned that up and dug out all the trees and caught a bunch of gardeners and said, we need you to just hit the fuck out of this with your weed whacker. Allow the, if there's not a lot of weeds that have thorns in them, just chop and drop. That's a whole method of fertilization within itself. Well, what's good about that is that if you do some raking, just a little bit of raking or hoeing or whatever, and you're going to rake that in, you're going to rake that grass clippings, those grass clippings into the ground, more and more seeds. You're going to find you got your bare patches over here of sand and stuff that doesn't grow or gravel. And then you'll be able to kind of work your magic around that. You can grow right on top of it. All you got to do is cover it with some good soil from your mulching station. Now, a couple of positive things and a couple of negative things. Positive things, you get rich soil in about 3 or 4 months. You can dissolve practically anything, bone from fish or chicken or whatever, in these pots as well. You can have soil within 3 months, and then a handful of soil like that can also be your fertilizer for your grass, fertilizer for your plants and fruits, fertilizer for your trees. So that way you don't have to go to the store and buy any, because all you need is a simple bucket, some weeds, and some water, and that'll be your fertilizer thing. Or you could probably do, and I don't want to do this because it's plastic, but 2-liter bottle test, 3-liter bottle test. What they'll do is they'll fill those up with rainwater. Stuff them full of leaves, but stuff them full of button mushrooms. And like the button mushrooms, a little tiny bit, oh, what in the world is it? But anyway, this is mixture, and you can put it inside a 2-liter bottle, poke holes in the top, and that'll be your spray bottle for your fertilizer. It's not fog, it's not a fog nozzle, but it's a good start. But that'll be like your dropper if you have a dropper bottle, okay, let me get some trash out here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, it looks like an IV drip. Okay, you can water your garden automatically every day just using a plastic bottle like this. Okay, poke some holes in the bottom and put not just normal water into your bottle. You want to put fertilizer into this. My favorite form of fertilizer is free fertilizer, which could be fish, it could be old green plants, and you got to use green plants. Fill these suckers up, just pack tight with weeds, and then fill them with water in the surface area and so on. And in 3 weeks or so, you'll have yourself a nice potent, not just like a fertilizer, but it'll keep the plants hydrated. So you're going to just take yourself a little safety pin like this, heat it up, and poke 6 holes into your cap. You could do it with a nail, but that'll be too big. You want to poke one little tiny air hole in the top here. That'll be your vent. It doesn't matter where it is. Then you're going to take this and you're going to screw that down into your soil next to the plant about this far. When you see that water table start to drop, right about the halfway mark, okay, you know by then that your fertilizer is kicking ass because you see your plants changing quickly. So you have 2 methods of watering your plants when you don't have water in shitty weather like this. When it's 90 degrees outside, it's very hard to grow anything because it's like I said, the ground is like cement. It's all very abused. When it rains, it runs right over the top because it's a desert. This would be your solution for the bottom. Or you could run a tube. They put this at a higher elevation. Run a tube with a bunch of holes in it. And that would be your line for drip irrigation for your plants. You'd have to fill this up every day. You have to do one of these every single day. Or you could do like I do and just get 20-liter bottles. Take your 20-liter jugs, basically. 20-liter jugs would be like a laundry detergent type of thing. Stuff it packed out with weeds. Connect your hose at the bottom. Turn it off. Fill full of water. Push it under. Put it near your compost pile, whatever it's got to take. And that will be what you would connect your pistol to. So when you want to water your plants manually without using the automatic system, you'll be able to, because all it is just like it's a chargeable battery, rechargeable battery. It looks like a drill, but it's actually just a miniature pressure cleaner that has a very small pump on it that gives you just enough pressure to be able to clean your car. It's basically water your car. It's battery operated, so that makes it awesome to just walk with a bucket or your jug full of your weed water. And just so you guys know, I do this for fun. This is not a job. They could pay me, I'm sure, but I'm not interested in being a slave to the government here, because that's precisely what happened. If you take a government job, then you're an idiot. Okay, you might be getting guaranteed money, but you better believe you're going to be fired. So I just wanted to point this out because it does get very, very cold here. Did you guys see the fog outside? If you haven't seen the fog, I'm going to show you the fog. So one more time with you fog nozzle dudes. Smooth bore fog nozzle motherfuckers. So here we are. Oh, you hear that thunder? The delicate sound of thunder? Okay, now the fog looks like it's lighting up a little bit, but this is amazing, right? Fog travels up and then it travels down. It travels up and then depending upon the pressure, the air pressure, the humidity level, it drops down. Look, you guys, there's a ghost over there. You guys see the ghost? There's a ghost over there. Scary. Hey, let me zoom in on it. Did you guys see the ghost? There's a ghost over there. Fuck, dude. Hold on. Oh, you can't even see him because the wire is in the way. See the ghost? It's actually a ghost, you guys. Well, anyway, back to the fog. See this fog here, guys? And I could feel, yeah, man. Dude, this is just great. This is just great because this is the most ideal weather for planting because it's wintertime. You know what I'm saying? It's December and I'm not expecting the garlic to come on the ground until probably March, April because it needs time to grow. And once you see that it's dying off and you're going to take them, you're going to hang them upside down like you do your onions. So anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that because most people think that Mexico is nothing but a desert, which, yeah, a lot of it is, and it's treated as such. But you get to see things like when we were in Saudi Arabia, like people were growing gardens in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, how are they doing that? Well, they're doing that by recycling water. When it does rain, it rains like hell, and it rains and it floods, and it's not good. Because, like I said, the sand does not absorb the water; it runs right over the top of it, and that's what causes flooding. Is when there's not enough plants to for everything to drain properly. When I say drain, and I mean coming down, rain, it doesn't accumulate. It does not accumulate. Amazing, right? Amazing. So I'm going to get back to doing what I was doing over here because we have a busy day today. It is Tuesday. It's 5 a.m. now. And we've been on here for 51 minutes talking about the weather in Mexico. So do me a favor, please hit that subscribe button and like the video. If you could just like the video, subscribe it, share the video on Facebook or whatever so that someone can help me out. We're at 425 subscribers. So we're halfway to the 1,000 mark, almost. And I would appreciate you guys subbing and doing all that good stuff. So I'm the professor. Appreciate you. Like and subscribe, and we're out.